Rambai village, Chief Maranges lands in eastern Zimbabwe. This is 2nd of June 2023. A woman is cooking sadza for her family. The woman cooking the sadza is Pure Gazana and she's married to Peter Mukwada. He is 29 years old and she is 21 years old. And apparently they have been living together for more than 5 years. And this tells me that she would have been 14 or 15 when they began staying together, which is something that is not exactly rare in rural areas right here in Zimbabwe. Girls get married very young. So for some time, he had been complaining that she was wasting food. He claimed that she was cooking too much sadza and was wasting all their money on. So one day, he decided that he was going to mark the pot. He wasn't going to allow her to cross a certain line when cooking sadza. Now, this would be considered kushusha in most households, but this was something that Pure endured for more than 5 years. Apparently, it was not just about the food. He used to beat her and control her every move. Sometimes she was even bitten for leaving her house and accompanying her guests. On this particular day, she cooked sadza as usual, and he complained again that she was wasting millimil, claiming that she had crossed the line that he had drawn. Pure did not respond. She served her husband and her children, but she herself did not eat. After this, she then walked 50 meters away from her homestead into the trees behind her house and ended her life. Peter had no idea what his wife had done. He thought maybe she was just throwing a tantrum and he thought she would be back very soon. But when he saw that hours passed, he decided to follow her and he found her hanging on a tree and he screamed for help. So obviously the neighbors heard the screaming and came to investigate and they saw Pure dead. And just after this, Peter disappeared. They thought that he was on the run. But unfortunately, Peter had decided also to end his life. I'm sure in his heart, he blamed himself for what had happened to his wife. On this particular day, 2 adults lost their lives and left their 2 children orphaned, all because of a disagreement about the amount of sadza. Sadly, in the same week, in Chipinge and Nyanga, 2 more suicides were recorded. Both of these people were men and both were as a result of domestic disputes. I know almost everyone that is watching this video right now has heard of someone or has known someone who has committed suicide. And this is one of the saddest videos that I've ever had to make because unfortunately suicide rates in our country are on the rise. In actual fact, according to the World Health Organization, Zimbabwe has one of the highest suicide rates in the entire world. In actual fact, we have a higher suicide rate than homicide rate. Our homicide rate is around 5 to 6 per 100,000 and our suicide rate is at around 17 to around 21 per 100,000. In fact, according to the World Health Organization, Zimbabwe was ranking at number 4 globally in the year 2021, and that is very worrying to me. So I decided to make this video. So in today's Yap session, we're going to be talking about a very sensitive topic. We're going to be talking about suicide, what causes it, and how come men are 3 times more likely to commit suicide in our beloved country. My name is Edlen and welcome to my Yap session. If you're interested in the topics that I cover on this particular channel, please do not hesitate to click the subscribe button and the bell so that you can be alerted every single time I upload a video. Just like I said in the intro, in Zimbabwe, the suicide rate is 3 times the homicide rate. Let me put this in numbers so that you can digest what I'm trying to say here. According to the World Bank data, Zimbabwe's suicide rate was at 15 per 100,000 and our murder or homicide rate was at 5 per 100,000. Just think about this. In the year 2015, Zimbabwe had 1,641 suicides. And in that same year, we had 981 murders. In other words, we are killing ourselves more than we kill one another. And the gap is not getting narrower, it's actually getting wider. I mean, if anyone asks you about Zimbabwe, you're going to mention the fact that it's peaceful. You're going to mention the fact that it is safe to walk at night. You're going to mention the fact that we have extremely low crime rate in this country. We have extremely low murder rate in this country. And you would obviously be right about that. But the violence is being inflicted on self. Can you imagine that every single year, Zimbabwe loses up to 2,500 people to suicide? That's almost 7 funerals a day. That's 1 in 4 hours, guys. That's a lot. We need to start taking this seriously. And there are multiple journals that are actually saying that these numbers do not actually reflect what is on the ground, that there's a lot of underreporting because of lack of resources. So this means that the numbers could even be higher. Zimbabweans on average are known to not be violent people, but how come they're inflicting so much violence on themselves? This shows that suicide is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more that is underneath that is pushing these thousands of people to end their lives prematurely. We have this very bad habit in our country where we only talk about mental health when someone has actually died. When a person expresses their mental difficulties to us, we just tell them to pray. We never follow through. We never actually give them space to express how depressed they are. And I can guarantee you that majority of these people that are committing suicide, it is not just one thing that triggered them to end their lives. These are people that have been suffering for years and sometimes even decades, and they did not find any help. People that are suffering from mental illnesses and mental disorders are at a higher risk of ending their lives compared to people that probably do not have the same conditions. I could not find a recent WHO mental health profile for this country, but I did find one from 2020, and it said that 218,000 Zimbabweans are approximated to live with major depressive disorder. These are people that are facing severe depression, and that's over 1% of our entire population. And fascinatingly, majority of the people that report depression are women. And the sad part is that the percentage actually rises for people that are above 70 years old, which means that a lot of old people in our country are facing a lot of depression. And then you have to take into consideration that there are a lot of other mental disorders that people are going through. For example, schizophrenia, anxiety, bipolar, epilepsy, etc. And then there are people that are abusing alcohol. According to the country's profile, there are more than 190,000 people that are addicted to alcohol, and majority of those are men. And obviously we can't talk about mental health struggles without addressing the fact that there has been a sharp rise in young people using drugs in this country, using meth, using cocaine, and using marijuana. All these conditions that I've actually mentioned increase a person's risk for suicide. These are very serious conditions that need medication. But unfortunately, in our country, very few people actually seek medical help because they believe that mental health struggles are a result of spiritual attacks. I can guarantee you that 8 out of 10 Zimbabweans actually believe that if someone is going through a mental health episode, there's a spiritual attack somewhere. It's quite unfortunate that people do not understand that the brain can also be sick sometimes. People are quick to attach these kind of struggles with demons, with witchcraft, with spirits, instead of actually acknowledging that a person's mind can simply be unwell. I myself personally know a lot of people that have sought healing from traditionalists, spiritualists, sangomas, white garment prophets, Pentecostal prophets, and have never sought medical opinion or even help when it comes to their mentally ill child or mentally ill sister, brother, or even husband. This is because our culture spiritualizes mental health or mental illness. I think this is something to do with not understanding exactly how the brain works. I think majority of the people do not understand how complex the brain is, and when it starts to malfunction, they can't understand why a person is seeing things that are not there, why a person is extremely depressed, or why a person is extremely anxious about everything in life. They think that if you were to go to an average Zimbabwean parent and tell them that you're extremely depressed, that your mental health is not doing well, they'll probably not understand you, because they'll say, oh, we went through worse in life, but we never thought of killing ourselves, because they fail to understand that depression is not the state of the mood. Depression is actually a disease that needs to be treated. A lot of people think that depression is sadness. Depression is not sadness. Everyone has moments of sadness. Everyone sometimes has moments of feeling depressed, but depression itself is called clinical depression for a reason. It is actually a mental illness. Just as a person with arthritis may not be able to walk properly, may need a crutch to walk, this is the same thing that happens when someone has a mental disease or mental illness. If their mind is not working properly, it actually requires help for it to function effectively. And I just have to drop this in there. Did you know that we have less than 20 psychiatrists in our country? And majority of those are in Harare. The remaining are in other cities. Do you think that people in the villages actually have any access to mental health services? Obviously not. So let's say that you have the correct mindset and you actually understand that mental illnesses require medical assistance. What is the probability that you will get a psychiatrist? And even after that, what is the probability that you have the money to actually afford the treatment? It may be that people tend to blame witchcraft, sorcery, spiritualism for mental illnesses because it's a way for them to cope, because they know that if they were to really seek medical treatment, they will not be able to afford it. So to understand how the suicide rate got to where it is today, we need to look at this particular graph. In 2021, Zimbabwe's suicide rate was at its lowest in our modern history. We were at 12.8 per 100,000, which is not bad at all. It was still higher than the world average, but it was stable. I want you to look at something very fascinating. If you look at this graph, you see something that is evident, that in this time period, we had some of the highest suicide rates in our modern history. And this is because our currency collapsed. In November of 2008, there was hyperinflation, right? I mean, the loaf of bread was costing millions of dollars or billions sometimes. I mean, pensions evaporated and factories closed. There was a cholera outbreak and thousands of people died. And it was estimated that 3 to 4 million Zimbabweans left the country, and majority of them left illegally just to survive. And if you look at this graph, you see that the suicide rate nearly doubled. This is to tell you that there is a correlation between how a country is doing and the rate of suicide, especially when it comes to our country. In actual fact, if you look at this graph, you see that it hit 20.2 per 100,000 in the year 2009. And that is the same year we adopted the US dollar and the suicides came down. This literally means that hardship caused a lot of people's mental health to decline, and they decided to end their own lives. There was no food, there was no employment, there was no income, and people were desperate, people were suffering. They decided to end their own lives. And the figures kept coming down. If you look at the graph, you see that in 2017, we were at 15 per 100,000. And for a moment, things looked like they might be okay. And then in the year 2013, when inflation started coming up again, the suicide rate started climbing again. This is to tell you that majority of the people that are choosing to end their own lives are doing it usually out of desperation. They're not just doing it because they feel flimsy, but it just tells you that these people are desperate. These people are frustrated. In fact, according to WHO, the suicide rate for men is almost 3 times that of women. It's around 27 per 100,000 for men and 9 per 100,000 for women. And this is a trend that you find in almost every single country across the world. Men are more likely to die by suicide versus their counterparts. We live in a country where women outnumber men, and yet men are outnumbering women when it comes to unaliving themselves. In fact, it's almost 3:1. This is something that is worrying, and we need to look into that and try to find ways to resolve this. It is so bad that in 2024, the Bulawayo police actually released a number. They said that between June and the end of the year, in the year 2024, 21 people had committed suicide. And yet 20 of those 21 people were men. 20 of 21 people that had committed suicide in almost 6 months were men. You can't possibly look at this and just say, oh, well, this is just something that happens. This is obviously a cry for help. And as a people, we need to think about what we can do to solve this. So then we have to ask why. Why are men? Why the old men? Why the young men? Why are men choosing to end their lives at this alarming rate? And unfortunately, the answer is in one word, murume. In Shona, this word means a man, but I fear that English may not properly express how it is expressed in our own native language. Murume describes a role. This is not just being a man. This is not you having male genitals. It describes a specific role. So if someone says hausi murume, they're not talking about you not having male genitals. They're talking about your inability to meet certain social expectations. To be a murume in our culture is to be the provider, is to be the rock of your family, is to be the strongest one in the room. It literally means that you as a person, your needs come last. What I'm describing here is the patriarchal social expectation on a person that is considered a man. He is not just to be a partner, he's not just to be a brother, he's not just supposed to be a son. He is supposed to fill all those roles at once. He is the one that must provide the financial resources in the family, and not just for his wife, but for his children and for his mother, for his sister. All these people expect him to be a solution to their problems. He's the one that is supposed to pay lobola. He's the one that's supposed to buy the food that people have to eat on the day that they come for the ceremony. He's the one that has to pay for the wedding. If he doesn't, then he's not man enough. And then to be considered a man, he has to have a piece of land in the city. He also has to have a kumusha, a place in the village. He has to send his kids to the good schools. He has to make sure that his wife is well kept. All these pressures fall heavily on men. Even when someone dies in your own family and in your wife's family, you are supposed to be the rock. Financially, you're supposed to bury your parents, bury your sisters, and bury your in-laws without breaking a sweat. So there's a lot of shame and embarrassment and humiliation that comes with being unable to fulfill all these duties. This has been so internalized in our communities and in our society to an extent that if a girl introduces a boy to her family, they want to know everything about his financial status. They want to know his job. They want to know where he comes from. They want to know the state of his family. They want to know what his plans are in future. They want to know exactly how he'll be able to provide for their daughter. There's so many girls that have had to leave their boyfriends because of discouragement from their own relatives and friends, because the man is not showing any financial potential at that particular time. We live in a society that scales and weighs men based on their ability to provide financially. And yet we live in one of the poorest countries in the world. It means majority of men will not have the capacity to effectively provide. Even if the pressures of not being able to provide weigh heavily on you, who are you going to tell? A man is not supposed to cry. A man is not supposed to complain. A man is supposed to be strong and tough. Murume achemi is not just a phrase. It's not just a statement. It is literally a wall. It has blocked many men from being in touch with their emotions to an extent that even when they are going through difficult periods, they have no capacity, vocabulary, and freedom to actually share what they're going through. So because they internalize all these pressures that come from society, majority of them do not have the emotional bandwidth. They do not have the emotional infrastructure to express them and to digest them. The expectation of being a murume is not something that is unique to Zimbabwe. You find it in every single patriarchal society. And men are literally raised to not feel or be burdens. So when they feel like they are no longer able to function in that role of being a provider, they can sink into depression and choose to end their lives. Just imagine you're a man and you have a wife and 3 kids. And then one day you just wake up and you are retrenched. All these mouths to feed are looking at you. All these people in the house want you to come up with a solution. Your mental health is definitely going to deteriorate. And this actually causes a lot of men to end up indulging in alcohol. If you go to any rural growth point or any corner shop in high-density suburbs, you see a lot of men drinking. This is now something that they consider to be part of their daily lives. And yet majority of them have no idea that they're trying to numb the pain of not being a murume. To them, they think it's just them having fun with their friends. But the truth is, it is a coping mechanism. People are trying to self-medicate because of the pressures of society. So much is being expected for them, and they have very little to supply. And some may not even take the alcohol part, they will take the gambling part. Some men may not have an alcohol disorder, but they can start coping in different types of ways. For example, gambling. The newest right now is the deadliest, Aviator in Shona Kandege. I have a video on this on my channel. You place a bet and a cartoon plane takes off and climbs, and the longer it stays in the air, the higher you multiply your money. And in the last 3 years, Aviator has moved through Zimbabwe like a virus. There's so many people that have lost all their savings. Men are more likely to suffer from loneliness if they're not married compared to women. It is because they don't really have strong social bonds. Most of their relationships are very shallow. If you think I'm lying, just go to a group of male friends and ask them very intimate details about one another. You see that they barely know each other at all. They're usually just drinking buddies, or they go out together, or they just hang out once in a while, but they rarely really connect. This is also because of those social expectations for a man to be reserved, for a man to not be sensitive. Men are less likely to ask for help even from their own children, like women. Women feel really entitled sometimes to their children's money, but men sometimes may struggle. Why? Because of the same societal expectations that a man is the one that is supposed to provide. I'm going to try and speak in Shona now. kana ukaona munhu wauri kugara naye achiratidza kuti ari kuchinja behavior, especially kana ari murume, achiratidza kuti haasi kugona kukopa, zvitori nani mumuapproach, mutsvage vakuru mugare naye pasi munzwise uchichi kumunetsa. Varume vakawanda havakwanisi kutaura zviri kuvanetsa. Anogona kutoita dambudziko kubasa, anogona kutoita dambudziko abusive relationship nemukadzi, anogona kunge achito-blackmailwa, anogona kunge achito-shisidzirwa, anogona kunge akatobirwa, anogona kunge pamwe akatogambula mari yese asisina, anogona kusazvitaura. Vazhinji vacho vanhu vanozoona afa kuti anga ane dambudziko. Saka varume vanofanira kuexpressa mafeelings avo, vanofanira kutsanangura zviri kuvanetsa, tazvinzwisa, asi tiri kunzwisa kuti vakakurira musocial system isinga encourage kuti murume ave vulnerable, especially to women or to other men. So because of this, they internalize the shame, they internalize the pain, they internalize the inadequacy instead of processing it through communication. Saka, it's up to us, the people that are in these people's lives, to not just be an ear, but to try and understand why they cannot communicate. These are all the pressures that come from the system of patriarchy. Varume grow up closed off without any intimate bonds, even with their own family members. So iuri mukadzi unogona kutofila okay uchidepend on other people nekuti wakakurira musociety isingakushame for depending on other people. You were literally told that you were supposed to be taken care of. But as for the men, even if muchichengeta pamba pemwe munhu kana kuti muchichengeta pamba paambuya kana paatezvara, zvinogona kuita unge kwauri zvakanaka because watojaira kuchengetwa. Asi iye anogona kutambudzika zvakanyanya akapedzisira azviuraya. Kutaura kwemurume kuti ane zviri kumunetsa is not a time for him to be shamed. It's not a time for him to be given advice. It's a time for you to understand what he's feeling. It's a time for you to just offer an ear. It is time for you to be there for that person. It is not time for you to tell them what they must do, what they must not do. When someone is airing out their pain, let's listen to them and So if you're a Zimbabwean man that is watching this, just know this, you are not weak. The load that you're carrying is heavy. And you need people that are going to help you to manage that load. The government obviously can do more by allocating more resources to suicide prevention, but I believe that it really starts in our families. If people have really supportive family members, supportive friends, they are less likely to end their own lives. My name is Edlyn. I had a lot more to say, but my camera is at 5%. So thank you so much for watching this video. See you in the next one.